But anyway, I did have one lady came and she said, I want two of them. This was last year. She says, I want two of them, but I'm gonna pay you for them. That's the only one that's ever paid me. She's paid for $30. So she wants that money. But anyway, and it gives me something to do.
And if she's not quoting, she's hard on her.
You know what hard dollar is? You know what hard dollar is? It's Norwegian company. Yeah, and I do that. I make green pillows.
Yeah.
One of the
Sure. Oh dear.
So our and now for the electronics,
I've taught it that name sometimes.
Oh, I guess they don't want anybody to sit there. You know what? I will sit there. I can hear Yeah. We made made it. I was 5 minutes from having my pajamas.
Well, good evening.
Oh, no.
If you'll take a seat, we'll get the meeting started here. So thank you all for coming again. It's a nice cool night out there. It's not sunny, so you can't enjoy the sun. You might as well come inside here and enjoy the lecture. So we have some very exciting talks coming up this week. Carl Kerby is here from Kentucky. He's close to the Answers in Genesis museum out there. And he's here to speak at the homeschooling convention, which is going on in Redmond. And he had trouble escaping that, I understand, just to get here on time, but we're glad he's here. So I'm going to cover a few things before he comes up, and then we'll give him some time to speak on the topic at hand. Let me just open up in a word of prayer, and then we'll start. Father, we just come to you just to thank you for this time that we have. We thank you for Carl and for his ministry. We thank you for his enthusiasm about what he is speaking about. And we look forward to his talk here. We just pray that we would have open hearts, open minds to listen to what he's got to say. Thank you for this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So before Carl comes up, by the way, we have Mike Riddle coming in 3 weeks. Mike Riddle actually is a close neighbor and a close friend of Carl Kerby. And so two of them have been involved in ministry, I think each of them more than 30 years. Speaking on these kinds of topics, so they know of where they speak.
You said
So
3 weeks, but 3 months. You said 3 weeks, but 3 months.
3 months. Yeah, sorry, three months. And that'll be when it comes up in the schedule. You'll see when he's coming. But first of all, I want to talk about these 4 things I have on the slide. Creation tours. Last time, Ron Payne introduced those. CAPS is promoting 4 different tours as listed on the board there at different times this summer. And I've asked Ron to come up and just explain it to people that haven't been here to hear that before.
Thank you. I'm very excited about the field trips. We've developed a couple more interesting things that are going to happen. In the back on the welcome table are sign-ups for all 4 of the trips. You can come on all 4 of them if you want, actually. And some flyers about some of the details. And the dates are, we're going to go to Mount St. Helens first in June, and June 13th. How many have been to Mount St. Helens before? Have you ever been on the hummocks hike? How many have been on the hummocks hike? We're going to go on a little short hike. Actually, it's 2¼ miles. And we're going to go right down by where the canyons were carved in an eruption that happened 2 years after the main eruption. We're going to see where the Toutle River runs. And of course, if you were walking there now, you might say that the Toutle River carved those canyons. But we know for sure that the Toutle River is in the canyon because the canyon was formed by an eruption event, not there. So if you've anybody been to the Grand Canyon? Okay, what's the message there? One grain at a time, right, by the Colorado River? Well, maybe there's a different alternative. And it makes a difference when you actually see it and are there. So I would encourage you to come to the Mount St. Helens trip. These are 1-day Saturday events designed for the family. So we really encourage you to come. We're also going to go to Dry Falls, which is a result of what's called the Missoula flood. Anybody ever been over to the Dry Falls? Some of you have. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
Where is it?
It's over just east of Wenatchee on Highway 2, just off of Highway 2. You know where the Sun Lakes resort area, you know, the recreation area is? South of Grand Coulee Dam? Well, south of that is Dry Falls. Because it's all part of the same Missoula flood system. The Sun Lakes is actually in a giant canyon carved out by the Missoula flood. And Dry Falls is just south of that. Everybody misses it because everybody does the Sun Lakes and Steamboat Rock and all that. So we're going to go over there on a one-day event. And the neat thing about it, lake development, on the 27th of June, we're going to go over there, and Dennis Bakaboy is going to be leading the tour over there. He is a person, along with John Hergenrather down in Oregon, that sponsor what's called Creation Encounters, and they do this kind of as a regular routine thing, talking about the Missoula flood and the fossil beds down at John Day and Yellowstone, and a number of other geological features. He's a geologist by profession and an instructor, a retired instructor at a college in Oregon. So we're going to have a real treat having him here. He's going to be speaking here on the 26th of June, right? And the next day, he's going to go with us and lead the tour to Dry Falls. Then we're also going to have another Dry Falls tour in July, the same tour. Back on the back are the signups for that. If you sign up, I'll get back with you and give you the details about times and meeting places and stuff like that, okay?
What's the cost?
The cost is $0. However, it's all donation based, okay? So we like donations too. Thank you.
And all the information for signing up is available on the website. So remember the website, apologeticsforum.org, and you just click on Creation Tours there. And in fact, if you just put that up a little bit, right there, Creation Tours, and that'll give you all the details about how to sign up, what Ron's email address is, his phone number, so you can contact him there if you're interested in one of those 4 tours. Information about all 4 is on that particular website. Okay, a number of ways to get it, but it's all there. Okay, back to the front slide. Second thing I want to talk about is the training course. Mike Riddle, as I said, is coming in July, 3 months, and he's going to be speaking on the 24th, Friday the 24th of July. The next day, he's going to hold a one-day basic creation training course. And he does this in his ministry. He gives a whole bunch of different courses. They're all on his website. And again, the information on signing up there, Rick, if you go back to the web page, on the right there, just click on Basic Creation Training there. And all the information for signing up for that is there. The church here, it's going to be held at the church, and you can call the church to sign up for it just on the phone. But all the information is there, and it's also on the back welcome table. There's a green sheet there with Basic Creation Training Course. It describes it, and then on the back of that, there is a list of topics that will be covered by Mike in that course. It's an all-day course. And for the young folks, it's great. Even for us older folks, it's also great. We can learn from what Mike teaches and how he teaches that course. So you want to think about that. If you possibly have an interest, just pick up one of the flyers on the back table there, and it'll describe everything. But again, on the web page, you can get straight there as well. And we'll have more to say about that in the upcoming meeting, so you get plugged in. The third thing I want to talk about is opportunities for out-of-town speakers. We bring speakers in here from out of town. I looked at the list of speakers we had, and Rick, bring up the next page there. And we've had 10 speakers who were local, 10 local speakers. We've also had 6 regional speakers. That is, they've come from Oregon, Idaho, the states around us, and even from Canada. And the other 4 were national speakers, like Carl and Mike are national speakers because they don't live in this area at all. And so when we bring them out to speak here, we like to get them lined up to speak at other possible churches, events that we have. And I've listed 6 possibilities there on the slide here. Schools, we bring them into the Christian schools here. There's 2 big schools, if they're available. Sometimes for breakfast, if somebody has a special breakfast, and then also sometimes for morning worship on Sunday, Sunday school hour, evening worship, what have you. And we're going to take advantage of Carl being here, and he's going to be at our church this Sunday as well. And you may have another idea of how you would like to use speakers that come in and out of town. We're having a special one tomorrow night for Carl, and that is what we call a youth night. And again, all the information about that is in the email, if you're on the email list, and also on our website. The topics are listed on the sheets back there. You can pick up a flyer back there on that table as well if you're interested in coming to that. And I would encourage the youth to really come to that. And I'm at the end of the Carl's talk, I'm going to ask him after the Q&A just to give a little plug for the tomorrow night. Okay, so if you have any interest in that, let me know. Again, all the information is on our website and how to do that. Okay, that's all I wanted to cover. And bring up the next slide, Rick. And I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to introduce Carl. Back a few here. There we are. Okay, so as you know, the topic at hand is answering skeptics. I'm sure many of you watched the debate between Bill Nye and Ken Ham, who's the president of Answers in Genesis. Very interesting debate. And Bill Nye, he's called the science guy. Bill Nye, the science guy. But as we'll see, the science isn't his strong suit. But anyway, there's a talk video that Carl has critiqued, and he's going to give some rebuttals to what this science guy has to say. And here's some of the questions that he's going to answer, and a little bit of background on Carl. He has been speaking for, like I said, about 30 plus years at this point, and he knows of where he speaks. He was one of the founding members of the board of Answers in Genesis with Ken Ham, and now created his own ministry, which is called Reasons for Hope. After his lecture, we'll have time for Q&A, and you'll want to take a look at his book table there as well. And he also has a colleague, Juan Valdez, who is with him here as well. He'll be at the table. You may speak to him, have some questions for him too. But Carl, with that, let me introduce you and bring you up here.
Hey, Juan. Yep. Up here for a second. I want to put in a plug for Mike Riddle's training course. Juan just hosted it down at his church in Miami. Juan's a pastor in Miami, but he's a speaker with me. Did I turn this on? Check, check, check. He's a speaker with me at Reasons for Hope, and you just hosted that with Mike. What do you think?
It was phenomenal. It was engaging. We had all of our Sunday school teachers. We had youth from our church and from a couple of other churches come. We had youth pastors and youth leaders come. It's a long day, and you say, I wonder if he could keep everybody for a long. He can. Keeps you very engaged, and the material is phenomenal. When you walk out of there, you know it. He teaches you in such a way where you walk out of it knowing it. It's just really, I recommend it highly. It trains you, it prepares you, and you don't have to be an expert and have a degree to be able to argue and present the case for creation. So you're going to love it. We're translating it now into Spanish, and I'll be doing it in Spanish as well. That's how much I believe in it. It's a wonderful, wonderful curriculum.
Now, Juan's been with me now, we're almost 2 years? Yes. Almost 2 years.
So one more point I forgot. The sign-up sheets are going around. There's two sign-up sheets on the clipboard. One is if you're not on the email list for your email distribution yet, add your name to the list with your email. And second, there's also a sign-up sheet for the basic creation training course. If you think you might have an interest in it, put your name on it, and somebody will be back in touch with you.
All right. We're going to try to figure out what's going on. There we go. But am I coming out on this? No. I didn't think so. My voice won't last yelling at you. That's check, check, check. I'm on. It's coming, check, check. Test, 2, 3, check, test. I don't count to more than 3 because I went to public school and checking, check. I tell you what, why don't you give me the handheld and I'll just work with the handheld, that's fine.
Sounds like you're coming through.
Is it starting to come through? Is it not?
There you go.
There you go.
Close enough?
Oh, I bet it's got short.
Check. How about I use the handheld? That's fine. I can do the handheld. I'll do that. Checking. There we go. Yeah, this is going to sound better anyway. Typically, handheld gives you a little bit better sound. But like I was saying, Juan's been with me now for almost 2 years, and he's doing a great class on critical thinking. Pray for him because one of the big issues in our culture today is, let's be honest, we got a generation that doesn't know how to critically evaluate anything. And so that's what we firmly believe that's what we do. We come in and try and challenge people to think. Don't teach them what to think, teach them how to think. And so that's kind of what I'm going to do tonight with this thing here. Now, as one of the recipients of you guys finding places for us to speak as an out-of-town speaker, let me say thank you because I know that Heinz can definitely use your help in that. Because like a guy like me, when I come into town, so I'm doing the homeschool conference. I'm done. I mean, I finished at 4:30. I don't want to go sit in a hotel room. You know, when I come out here, if I'm going to be away from my family, I want to do ministry. So if you guys know some things, man, boy, give them a hand because I know the speakers come in. I want to do ministry. I don't go out on the road to watch TV in a hotel. I don't even turn the thing on. It's so crazy. So thanks for helping him with that because being able to get these multiple meetings like that, man, that really helps. And it's an encouragement, I know, to me personally. So tonight, I don't know, we'll see. We'll go after this topic. Name of the ministry is Reasons for Hope. And I joke with folks, there's lots of reasons for hope, right? I mean, think about it. Money in the bank. You are looking at me like, okay, so we won't go there. Yeah, if you think money in the bank is going to give you hope, not good. You sell it for what the world can give you, they can take it away pretty quick. Good looks, there's a great reason for hope, right? You laugh at me. Yeah, I know. I look a whole lot different now than I did 70 pounds ago when I got married. I quit counting years. So you better not put your hope in that. See that asterisk? Leads to the answer. His name is Jesus. And that's the one thing that will never leave us, never forsake us. And boy, we can put our hope in that. So Jesus is that hope. So this evening, what about Bill Nye? Answering skeptics. You know, I kind of, I don't know. I'm strange. You'll figure that out. There are 3 people who walked on water. Can you name them? Peter, Jesus. You don't know the third? Me neither. I'm trying to figure his name out. But maybe you can tell me. One of these days I figure I'll find somebody that knows his name. I'm just not quite sure. So, yeah, I'm not sure on that. Now, I got to see if we have critical thinkers, because remember, teach how, not what to think. So critical evaluation time. All right? How could a child fall out of a 20-story building onto the ground and live? What's that?
Fell from the first floor.
He fell from the first floor. So, why do I do that? Because I think we have a generation that really needs to start thinking, man, we've been challenged. And Bill Nye is one of those guys that definitely made a comeback, all right? He kind of disappeared, quite frankly. And now all of a sudden he's made a comeback. And so I say that we better have a good answer to the stuff that he likes to throw at folks. Now, play a video for you. Now, there's a tone in here. Don't worry about it. It's there to make you pay attention, and it'll fade. But this is kind of what my desire is when I come out and do a weekend like I'm doing here. This is one of my desires to see this happen.
My friends, I'm writing to let you know that whether you like it or not, you're in a war zone. There's an enemy seeking to destroy you, and his allies are always coming after you. Believe me when I say the battle requires everything you got. Mental fortitude, physical prowess, and above all else, a prayerful dependence on the King who has faithfully given you everything you need for the spiritual power, knowledge, and understanding to take for you to prevail. I beg you to continually read his word. His strategy is perfect. And even though the war has already been won, Don't let that knock you off guard and lead you into complacency. There is an urgency to all of this, and we have a commandment to follow. Now, and this is very important, when you're out there, remember you're not fighting against flesh and blood, so don't get sidetracked or pulled into useless sparring matches. Stay the course. Since we fight differently than others, we'll be treated differently. Keep your eyes and ears open because we're being fired on from all directions. Be on the lookout, especially for spiritual and mental attacks. The enemy's ammunition is deceit, doubt, and fear, and it's launched strategically in the things we see, hear, and read. He is a wicked influencer, and he moves people to hurl vicious attacks on us, and he'll do everything he can to destroy the foundation of our faith and blind us so we don't help others. Stay bold. Stay true. Remain sober-minded. Hold closely the authentic word so you can spot the counterfeit immediately and demolish it. Don't fall for age-old tricks or sleight of hand misdirection. It's all fake and empty. Stand firm on the King's foundation. Go the distance. Fight the good fight. I know it's not easy, but now is not the time to run and hide. It's time to proclaim the truth and live by it. It's time to be ready and willing to boldly run forward with the gospel of peace as your inspiration. In one hand, you hold the impenetrable shield of faith, and in the other, the sword. Strike down arguments, ideas, and causes against the King. Be wise and make the most of every opportunity. Lastly, my friends, be prepared to answer people who genuinely want to know where your hope comes from in the midst of all this. They're in this war too, but they don't have the hope you do. Try to remember what that was like. Help them. Teach them the way. I wish I could have written about something entirely different. In fact, that's what I started out to do. But instead, my friends, I was compelled to urge you all to contend.
There are 400,000 churches across the nation of America. There are 6,000 first-run theaters. Which one is impacting the younger generation more, be honest? The theaters are kicking our tails when it comes to reaching this younger generation. We have a generation that absolutely is under attack. And that verse in Jude, man, is so clear. Think about what God is telling us to do, to contend for the faith. And that word contend is a really good word. It's an interesting word. I mean, it's the core, the foundation to the English word of agonize, the English word agonize. This is not something that we can go into lightly. This is work. This is a battle. When you look at the core of that word, it's very interesting. It's strenuously fight for the faith against enemies. And that, I mean, when we're fighting is standing upon a thing which is assault, which the adversary desires to take away, and it is to fight so as to defend it and to retain it. It's a battle. And that's what we need. In our world today, right here in America, we're fortunate. It's a spiritual battle. I think it's going to become a physical battle as well. But we, at this time, are blessed that it's a spiritual battle. But we don't have folks that are geared and ready for that spiritual battle. There's a quote that was attributed to Martin Luther, and he didn't make it. It was actually from a book, Our Neighbor Martin Luther, which was not a word for word, him saying this type of a thing. But I think it's a great quote, and I want to share it with you because it really does nail where the battle is. Even though Luther didn't say this, I think he would have. I profess with the loudest voice and the clearest exposition every portion of the truth of God except precisely that little point which the world and the devil are at that moment attacking. I am not confessing Christ, however boldly I may be professing Christianity. Where the battle rages, the loyalty of the soldier is proved and to be steady on all the battlefield, besides his mere flight and disgrace to him if he flinches at that one point. We are to contend for the faith, to fight strenuously. So, who's the enemy? Bill Nye. No. Bill Nye is not the enemy. Satan is the enemy. Now, Satan likes to use folks like Bill Nye. So what I did was, he did a short video with a group called Big Think. So I just take it and we break it down. That's essentially how I do most of my talks, is I take secular stuff, let's take their stuff, let's break it down. Because teaching how and not what to think truly is having a better impact, in my humble opinion, with this younger generation. So let's take his video and let's start breaking it down.
Denial of evolution is unique to the United States. I mean, we are the world's most advanced technological. So, I mean, you could say Japan, But generally, the United States is where most of the innovation still happens. People still move to the United States. And that's largely because of the intellectual capital we have, the general understanding of science. When you have a portion of the population that doesn't believe in it, it holds everybody back, really.
Interesting. I can't play it all at once. We gotta, because it's just so much. We gotta take it and break it down, okay? When you have a portion of the population that doesn't believe in that, it holds everybody back, really. What does he mean by that?
What is that?
Evolution. Okay? So denial of evolution is what's causing our world to fall apart. Do you know what my next question is? What do you mean by evolution? Right? You know, I'm a big one that on words. You know, words have meaning. And you better know what the meaning of the word is that you're trying to have a conversation with somebody about. When I get, especially the college age, boy, they come up, they're full of vinegar, brother, and they're ready to go. And it's like, oh, well, everybody knows this is a fact. And it's like, evolution is a fact. What do you mean by evolution? Explain it, please. I look, I'm the son of a professional wrestler. I'm not very bright. I grew up from a guy with one crusher, boozer, Muller, assassin. Okay, so I'm not real smart. What do you mean by evolution? Isn't that a fair question? Because if I tell you that I believe this, you have every right to say, well, what do you mean by that? So I think we need to ask questions. Denial of evolution. What do you mean by evolution, Mr. Nye? So words have meaning? How about this? How about this little, just I don't know, just something to see if you're awake.
Weekend Update recognizes its obligation to present responsible opposing viewpoints to our editorials. Here with an editorial reply is Miss Emily Latella.
What's all this fuss I keep hearing about violins on television? Now, why don't parents want their children to see violins on television? Why, I thought the Leonard Bernstein concerts were just lovely. Now, if they only show violins after 10 o'clock at night, the little babies will all be asleep and they won't learn any music appreciation. But they'll end up wanting to play guitar and bongo drums and go to Africa and join these rock and roll outfits, and they won't drink milk. I say there should be more violins on television and less game shows. It's terrible the way they what?
That was violence on television, not violins. Violence.
Oh, well, that's different.
Yes.
Never mind.
You see, if you're not using words correctly, you cannot communicate very well sometimes. So, what does Mr. Nye mean by evolution? Instead of me telling you, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take you to his show. I mean, why not let him define what it is that is denial of, is killing our culture? By the way, did any of you see this when when it was out originally? Some of you grew up with this stuff. My children grew up with this stuff, and I'll be honest with you. It didn't really bother me that much back then. I didn't realize how ardent he was. And by the way, it's not like he's changed. He's always been ardent. Did you catch what he showed? Even back in the day, he was very open about who he was, but it was done in such a way that it was very not offensive. Today, he's a different cat, all right? So let's let him define evolution for us.
Change. Living things change over time. Little changes and big changes. That's evolution.
Really? Okay, so denial of that is what's destroying our culture. There's got to be more. Oh, there is. There is.
Do you realize that every living thing on Earth has been changing for the last 3 billion years? That's why we're all so different. Well, we are different. But as different as we all are, we all have a lot in common because we're all made of the same few basic chemicals. Now, this process, this thing that happens is called evolution, and it's been going on for billions of years.
Isn't that wild? It is kind of wild.
Okay, this is not me lecturing you tonight. This is interaction. What questions would you be asking right now? You get in a conversation with somebody, change, tiny changes, lead up to big changes. What questions would you ask somebody? Please, somebody, sir.
Why would they change?
Why would we change? Well, mutation. The environment is distorted and things are happening inside the body. The sun, is coming down, causing mutations and that. So that's going to cause change. Sir?
My question is, different animals have different genes, different chromosomes. How do you get from one to the other?
Okay.
That's never been answered on any TV show I've heard.
All right. What other questions, ma'am?
How do you know it's billions of years?
How do you know it's billions of years? Well, come on, everybody knows that. We see the radioisotope dating, and that proves this. And just as Starlight, you got light from stars that are millions of light years away, and the Earth, if it's young Earth, you can't get the light. What are other questions? What are other questions? Bring it on. Let's throw them out there, please.
What's the proof of the big changes that have happened?
Good.
No transitionals.
Transitional forms, that's taken into the fossil record, which I love to talk about that, show their phylogenetic charts. Okay?
Were there any big changes that happened in a short period of time?
Big changes that happen in short periods of time.
That have been attributed to genetic mutation.
Okay.
And do they have any shown today?
How do those tiny changes work? How do they lead up to the big changes? Okay? Let me let Dr. Nye explain it to you.
So take a look at this. It's a picture of my parents, and I'm going to make a photocopy of it. Now watch. See, the copy looks just like the original, but not exactly like it. There are some small differences because there's some small changes that happen every time you make a copy. The same thing happens when living things make copies of themselves, like when they have children. See, the children of living things are always different from their parents, but not completely different. I mean, they're related. They have the same genes.
So how do the tiny changes add up to the big changes? Watch.
See, you and I are the product of billions of years of tiny changes to our DNA. They happen every time living things make copies of themselves. Like every time we have children, when your grandparents had your parents, and when your parents had you. This process of change is called evolution. It's the reason we all look the way we look.
Okay, critical thinkers, somebody blow that argument out of the water for me, please. Using that illustration right there. Some of you, did you see the debate with Bill Nye and Ken Ham? Anybody see it? Anybody? Okay. Here's the way that I would have done that. And I'm not like I'm some super genius or anything like this. I would have used his clips, his definition. And then I would have challenged them. But how would you have challenged using that right there? Ma'am?
When you photocopy something, it gets worse.
Thank you. His mechanism is to make a copy. And it looks not exactly like, because there's tiny changes. What are those tiny changes? Now let me use this. Dr. Nye, please explain to us how a copy of 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 a copy, and by the time you get to the billionth copy of a copy, will you even be able to tell what the original was? You have lost information with every copy. You, sir, now I'm going to concede the next 20 minutes of my time for you to explain to us how losing information explains an amoeba turning into a worm, to grow legs, to crawl out of the land, to become an amphibian, to turn into a rat, to turn into a wolf, to go back in the ocean, become a blue whale. I concede my 20 minutes, but you deal with that. You can't go anywhere else. Deal with that. What do you think? You think you could deal with that? There is no explanation. Your mechanism is to make a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and that adds up to big changes? Yeah, big mess. It's headed the wrong. Let me put it like this. We're here in Washington, right? I live in Kentucky. So when I get ready to fly home on Monday, I'm going to get on a flight headed to Tokyo. How long is it going to take for me to arrive in Kentucky on a plane headed to Tokyo? You're not going to get there, brother. That's exactly the problem with that. Think about that. We should have been challenging him. According to Bill Nye, our country is failing because we don't accept this.
Progressing from simple spineless shapes to more complex forms, animals develop a backbone and receive the first vertebrae.
Where are they getting it from?
A simple, okay, by the way, simple, you want to tell me, give me a simple life form. Amoeba, not simple, complex.
Should be the highest life form if everybody else is losing information, passing down the line, so you should be your highest life form, or among your highest.
Guys, we got to challenge it. We got to teach a generation to challenge that. If that's your mechanism and you think that that mechanism is going to lead to a spineless shape growing a backbone, do you know how complex the backbone is? The interaction with the muscles and the spinal cord, and guys, that's not simple. That's amazingly complex. And an amoeba is amazingly complex. So think about this. Mutations cause a spineless shape to become more complex because of mutation. Let's deal with mutations. May I, please? I'm a simple man. I'm working a lot with the younger generation. So let's explain what a mutation does. Here's the way that I do it. Have you ever heard of Mr. Potato Head? Anybody? Oh, yeah, okay, good. I want you to imagine that you have the Mad Daddy set of Mr. Potato Head. I'm talking every piece ever made. How cool would that be? Oh, that'd be awesome. How many different Mr. Potato Head combinations could you make? Let's cut to the chase. A lot. All right? A lot. So think about this. With Mr. Potato Head, let's just start with just a few pieces. These are just a few pieces. How many different combinations of Mr. Potato Head could I come up with? Just a random 16 pieces, okay? I can come up with all kind of Mr. Potato Heads. What is that? Rearranging existing information, right? What does mutation give you? Rearranging existing information or losing information. So imagine this. We now lose information, right? So now we lose some of the pieces from Mr. Potato Head. Can we make as many copies as we could before? No, we can't. So what does mutation give us? Well, you can still get some figures, but then you might end up with something like koalas. And they are so specialized that they lose one source of food, they're gone. That's not a good thing. Mutation can lead to the point that you get all kind of different looking dogs. You can get different quote unquote colored folks, even though we all have the same skin color, but different looking folks. Or you could get something that's not too nice. You could rearrange things and it not come out very well, okay? Mutation doesn't give you anything new. It takes existing information, rearranges it or loses it or messes it up. You can get to the point where now you got 5 fingers or you got 3 fingers. That's a mutation. How does that turn a scale into a feather? How does that do anything like that? It doesn't do anything like that. You see, we got to teach a generation to think, oh, but Carl, we saw this in the textbook. In the human biology textbook, mosquitoes evolved the resistance to DDT. There's evolution. That's what our kids are hearing. Oh, really? Well, let's kind of deal with that. So what do we have in the world? Well, right now we have mosquitoes that are resistant to pesticides, DDT, and we have mosquitoes that aren't. So now you got a bunch of mosquitoes. You come out and you spray them with the pesticide. And what's going to happen? The ones that aren't resistant are going to die. Most of them. Not all of them, most of them. And the ones that are resistant are going to survive. And then they repopulate. And what now is going to happen? You get a lot of mosquitoes again, but now you've got a bunch that are resistant to pesticide. Now they come again and they spray with the pesticide. What's going to happen this time? You're not going to kill off as many mosquitoes. So they evolved resistance to pesticide. No, they didn't. They already had that information. You just killed off the ones that didn't have that information to begin with. They already had that resistance in place. You see, guys, If that's your mechanism for a worm to grow legs to crawl out of the land, you got a big problem. Oh, but sickle cell anemia. Are you kidding me? Guys, do some research. This is what's being used right now. Healthy red blood cell, sickle cell. Well, it won't carry the malaria virus because it's got a sickle cell, so they don't die from malaria. No, they die from sickle cell. That's even uglier. That's a good thing? That's not a good thing. Let's keep going.
Evolution is the fundamental idea in all of life science, in all of biology. It's very much analogous to trying to do geology without believing in tectonic plates. You're just not going to get the right answer. Your whole world is just going to be a mystery instead of an exciting place.
That one just blows me out of the water. The world is just going to be boring because, oh, it's just not exciting anymore because we don't have tiny things adding up to big things. What does that mean about the founders of science? It must have been a very boring place back then. I mean, you got the founders of science. I mean, how boring could it have been? Because they didn't know anything about change. I mean, must have been very boring for these guys. Boring existence. Are you kidding me? Go back and look at the founders of almost every branch of science. You know what you find? Not just Christians, creationists. I mean, boring, world's boring to this guy right here. I mean, Pascal. I mean, Linnaeus, it was boring to them? Oh, no. How ridiculous is that? By the way, name an innovation, all right? An innovation that has occurred because of a belief that making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy is how we got everything. What innovation has been created because of that? Nothing.
Your world just becomes fantastically complicated when you don't believe in evolution. Here are these ancient dinosaur bones or fossils. Here is radioactivity.
By the way, I got to do this. ADD, be parent, grandparent, be glad I wasn't your child. ADD, they didn't know what it was when I was a child. They would have not have put me on medication. They would have had me on an IV drip in a hospital stand. My mind is always running. I gotta go over here, all right? I gotta do this, all right? Continental. Remember, because he said continental drift. Remember he talked about continental drift?
Tectonic plates.
Or the continents, the forming of the continents. Let's take a look at this. Pangea, oh, how are we going to explain that? Let me let National Geographic explain it to you because it's such a simple process. I mean, how do you get all the continents broken apart? Continental drift is so simple. Let me let National Geographic explain it to you.
The continents roamed separately until about 1.8 billion years ago, Arctica collided with what is now Eastern Antarctica to form Nina. Then Nina, Atlantica, and collided 1 billion years ago, forming the supercontinent Rodinia. After about 300 million years, the three landmasses separated and came back together in a new configuration, Pangea. Pangea came apart too. When Pangea split, and Atlantica split up too.
You see how easy that is? I mean, they came together, broke apart, came together, broke apart, listen to this.
If you're confused, join the club. Even the Earth seems confused.
That's the best you got. Confused, join the club. Even the Earth seems confused. Guys, I love that. I love that. But I gotta, let me see if I can find this. This is how weird I am. I found this thing the other day and it's like, oh, I gotta show it. I hope I can find it. If not, oh well, we'll have to go to another area. Return, presentation. I should have thought of this before. Ice Age. This was so good. No. Oh well, I'm gonna have to go on. I can't find it. So let's deal with what he's talking about. the ancient dinosaur bones. The world becomes so fantastically complicated because we have ancient dinosaur bones. Have you ever, I know Heinz has had to talk to you guys about the dinosaur flesh, the dinosaur red blood cells. You guys have seen that video? Have you ever seen the 60 Minutes interview?
Yeah.
You've never, let me show you some of this. This is good.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left, but there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you understand what happened. They find dinosaur bone. She puts it in a solution to melt, to get rid of the minerals, and what she end up with? Dinosaur flesh. And this is what it should look like if it was young, recent, right? But this is impossible. Listen, just watch this, watch this.
So you see this and you think what? You
I didn't want to tell anybody.
Now we got to talk here for a second. I want you to think about this. You have just made the most amazing discovery. You tested it over and over and over again. And you now know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are getting red blood cells, blood vessels, dinosaur tissue, and you have dinosaur bone that has no mineralization in it. You know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have this stuff, and you don't want to tell anybody. Hello? You just made this most amazing discovery that blows everything that everybody knows out of the water, and you don't want to tell anybody? Why?
Because you would not be considered as a serious scientist anymore, you would lose funding.
You know why? Watch this. Watch this. Sorry. Here we go.
They'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, you know, I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
Question for you. How could that be? It's not 68 million years old. Oh, by the way, you know the one question that lady never asked in the entire interview? Are you certain that this stuff is 68 million years old? Never asked. How could that be?
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million.
Your world becomes fantastically complicated. Those ancient dinosaur bones, how do you explain them? Excuse me, sir. How do you explain flesh, blood vessels, blood cells that you date 68 million years old? There's no known process even close to allowing something organic material to last 68 million years. The best known method for storing organic material, cryogenetically to store it, to freeze it, DNA will last only 100,000 years at the best. And now you're finding this stuff and you're telling me it's not only 68, you find dinosaurs 80 quote unquote million years old, that you date that? And you think we have a problem? You think my world's fantastically difficult? How about there's another possibility? How about it's not 68?
Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime.
Guess what? Didn't work, because they kept repeating it and kept repeating it. No biofilm, no slime. It's blood vessels, it's red blood cells.
But as Mary showed us, she's been able to replicate her findings. These are pieces of an even older dinosaur, a well-preserved 80-million-year-old duckbill. When she dissolved it away in acid.
Let's put this under the scope here.
Well, look, is that a blood
This
vessel?
is a blood vessel. You see the branches right there? And look at all of them. And it's so consistent over and over and over again. We do this bone and it comes out and I get excited every time. I can't help it. I mean, 8 million years old.
Mary published her new results last year, and while some of her critics have been swayed, the controversy still rages, and the stakes are high. If blood vessels can survive 80 million years, what about DNA?
Every known mechanism of storing organic material shows scientifically that it can't last more than 100,000 years. Do you know what the explanation is? There's some unknown process that allows this stuff to last 80 million years. I got another suggestion. Maybe it's not 80 million years old. Have you guys seen anything? Heinz, anybody done a presentation here on iDino?
No.
Guys, you need to have someone come out and talk to you on this. Mark Armitage did something very cool. Next year, July 18 to 22, join us. We're leading a dig to, you like your fossil excursions? Love them, man. Well, I'm taking folks to Glendive, Montana. We're going to go dig dinosaur bones. Only 20 people. That's all we can take because you got to keep it a small group. Well, Mark Armitage went out and they dug up a Triceratops brow horn that was 43 inches, all right, on the curve, 43 inches. No mineralization, no fossilization, okay? Organic material. And right next to it was the other brow horn. They only got a portion of it and it was totally petrified. So one is petrified, one is not petrified. All right, two brow horns from the same Triceratops. Well, petrification takes millions of years. Well, you got one petrified and one's not. Well, what did Mark do? Mark took the non-petrified one and he took it and he repeated exactly what Mary Schweitzer did. He put a piece of that horn in and dissolved the material around it, and look what was left over when he started pulling it out. He got entire sheets of osteocytes. Guys, this stuff doesn't last millions of years. These are osteocytes. They don't last millions of years. And he's not getting just one or two like her. She's got fragments. He gets entire sheets because that bone was not mineralized at all. Oh, what about radioactivity? Really? Do we have a problem with that? Anybody in here use a smartphone? Anybody? Anybody? 7 people, okay. That's a tough audience. 7 people use a smartphone? Really? That's it? Well, for you 7, download our app. It's called Reasons for Hope. We're not in church right now, so you can take your phone out and download it. Just go and download it, all right? It's free. I'm not trying to nickel and dime you. When you go on there, there's a little tab that says more. You'll hit more, then you'll go over. There's over a 10-hour video on this app. I want you to have some tools. We're giving them to you. Some of Juan's talks are on there, some of my talks are on there, but there's some really good stuff on there. And there's one questions answered, or it's got questions. Maybe it says got questions. But anyway, you'll see it. Got questions or questions answered. And there's a short 5-minute video on there on how we deal with radioactive decay and what does it actually give us. And so it's a short video. It's not long. You can watch that. It'll help you understand. You don't have to be afraid of carbon dating and those types of things. And I'm sure Heinz has gone through that with you. Understand the process. It doesn't give you dates. It gives you ratios of a parent and a daughter isotope that you use a mathematical formula to come up with the date. Just understand the process. But let's go back.
And I say to the grown-ups, if you want to deny evolution and live in your world that's completely inconsistent with everything we observe in the universe, that's fine. But don't make your kids do it, because we need them. We need scientifically literate voters and taxpayers for the future. We need people that can, we need engineers that can build stuff, solve problems.
So you scientifically illiterate voters in here today. We need engineers that can build stuff and solve problems. Really, how about we talk about all of these guys, they couldn't build stuff. They couldn't solve problems. I mean, because they just didn't believe that change can lead to everything that we see. So none of those guys could solve it. I mean, it's ridiculous. We need engineers that can build stuff. Okay. How about this guy? You think he's an engineer? You think maybe he could build stuff? Let's take a look here. Ready? Right here. You think he could build stuff? Huh? This is the father of our space program, okay? This is the guy who built it. And without doubt, this is a direct quote from a non-Christian, without doubt, the greatest rocket scientist in history. You've heard that, well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. This guy was a rocket scientist. And he built stuff, and he solved problems. And guess what? He loved the Lord.
When we think of what has sprung out of these early beginnings, it is downright amazing. We not only flew Americans to the moon, we also established quite a number of satellites that benefit mankind in a very direct way. One of the most exciting of them probably is the Large Space Telescope, a telescope that will enable astronomers to look about 10 times as deeply into space as a big telescope on Mount Palomar. Some people have said we can look so deep into space with that space telescope in orbit that we may be able to see the hand of the Maker.
Dr. Werner von Braun died June 16, 1977, at the age of 65. His simple headstone lists beneath his name Psalms 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.
You think he could build stuff? You think he could solve problems? This is interesting. I was just in Lubbock, Texas, all right, 3 weeks ago maybe, and somebody had a book, a creationist book, and there was a foreword to that creationist book. Guess who wrote it? Werner von Braun. A foreword to a creationist book. There simply cannot be a creation without some kind of spiritual creator. In the world around us, we can behold the obvious manifestation of the divine plan of the Creator. What random process could possibly explain the simultaneous evolution of the eye's optical system, the nervous conductors of the optical signals from the eye to the brain, and the optical nerve center in the brain itself, where the incoming light impulses are converted to an image the conscious mind can comprehend? This is Werner von Braun in a foreword of a creationist publication. It is difficult for me to understand a scientist who does not acknowledge the presence of a superior rationality behind the existence of the universe as it is to comprehend a theologian who would deny the advances of science. By the way, one of the other things that he built was a Lutheran church. Because in Huntsville, Alabama, they didn't have any Lutheran churches when he was there. So he and his friend built a Lutheran church. He could build stuff. He solved problems.
It's just really a hard thing. It's really a hard thing. You know, in another couple centuries, though, that worldview, I'm sure, will be, it just won't exist. There's no evidence for it. So.
Bill Nye is not the enemy. I have strong disagreements with him. I think his statements are totally off. But you know what? Jesus Christ died for him as much as he died for any person sitting in this room tonight. It's a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual problem. I praise God that you guys have an apologetics forum and you got people that come to it. Being honest, man. Trust me, I speak in some creation groups. I was in one not too long ago, okay? I set the record. The most in attendance ever. Blew their record out of the water. 92. They were shocked. The next night I was at, they had two branches. The next night I was in their other branch. We broke the record the next night, 100. That's the largest this group, which has been around for years, ever had. You guys are doing this on a consistent basis, regular basis? Praise God. Praise God. Hey, thank the leadership that's doing this. Thank the pastor that's opening up the church. It takes a lot of work to pull these things off, man. But Bill Nye, to me, is just a symptom. It's just a symptom of the problem. And the problem is that we have a generation that doesn't know how to use this. Whoops, there goes the glasses. To give answers to the world. And the world takes advantage of it. Well, let me do this. Let me do this. I'll take this rubber band off here. I think I got enough. If I don't, come see me. If you would, can I throw it to you? Take one and pass it. I came bearing gifts tonight. Thank you for letting me speak with you. A friend of mine is a missionary in the Philippines. He went to a village 3.5 hours north of Manila, and he got really discouraged. Prostitution, children being sold, the whole works, and his heart broke. He's like, what can I do to help these folks? Everybody's pushing, trying to sell something. If you will wear it, take one. If you won't wear it, please don't take one. But if you'll wear it, take it. One lady comes up, offers to sell him some wristbands. He said, no, thank you. She was polite. She said, well, if you decide to buy some, please remember me. And so he said, I'm going to help that lady because she was polite. You know, young person, you want to stand out in our culture today? Be polite. It's an amazing thing how crude and nasty our culture has become. And somebody that is a simple please, a thank you, yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, opening doors for ladies, gentlemen. How much that stands out. He says, I'm going to help her. So the day before he left, he came back and he said to that lady, I'd like to buy $100 worth of wristbands. She froze. $100? $100. I don't have $100 worth of wristbands. He said, here. He gave her the $100 and he said, I'll be back next month and I'll pick them up from you. He thinks she's going to take the money and run. He came back the next month. She gave him a big bag of wristbands. He did the math. 13 cents a piece is what he paid for those wristbands. He said, man, that's way too much. And she said, no, I fed my family for a month on that $100. He took those wristbands. He sold them. He went back. He bought more wristbands. Make a long story longer, he now buys $25,000 a month in wristbands from a single village in the Philippines. 75 families make their living from thread. He turned an entire village upside down. No more prostitution, no more children being sold. He built a church from the proceeds of thread. 1,000 people go to that church. He pays the pastor. He built a community center. The kids were dropping out of school because after elementary school, they had to catch a bus and go to another village. So he just built a high school, opened it up about 4 months ago, pays the teachers from thread. He doesn't collect a nickel. He collects nothing, not a thing. He said, Carl, he's got to raise his own support to be a missionary over there. He said, Carl, I couldn't take a nickel from these guys. These guys work way too hard for this. We have church splits in our country over thread. Seriously, you want red carpet? You want blue carpet? Heretic. And I can't talk to you because you talk to him. Heretic. We got church splits because of thread. This man turned an entire village upside down with thread. We are bound in ministry by our lack of imagination. Do I say that we have to compromise the message and water down? Not in the least. You guys know what these are though, right? I use these with waiters and waitresses, the people sitting on planes that are trapped next to me. Hotels, I check in hotels. I use these all the time. You know what they are, right? Because I tell everybody, you know what? We have a reason for hope. Money in the bank, right? Ooh, if we had gold in the bank, we'd be so happy. My dad made $250,000 a year wrestling in the 60s. He died living in a $3,000 trailer taking tolls at a toll booth. He couldn't pay for that trailer. You think money's gonna make you happy? You sell out for what the world can give you, the world can and will take it away, but that represents heaven and nobody can take that away from you. The only problem is that we can't get there because you see, we've all sinned, and that black, oh, that's sin. We've all sinned. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. What a sad story. We got a beautiful place, but we can't get to it. But it doesn't stop there, does it? God became a man. His name was Jesus, and he shed his blood. He died on a cross, and it says that whoever repents receives that free gift of eternal life. You know what he does? He washes us white like snow. He gives us new hearts, new minds. We're new creatures. We're new creations because of what he did. We have a message of hope because of what he did. Nothing that we bring to the plate. Doesn't matter where we've been, what we've done, or what has been done to us. That is what he did. And he loved us while we were spitting on him to die for us. And then that green, oh, you guys understand this. You got this beautiful green going on here. That means it's alive. It's growing. Well, guess what? That's a reminder to me that I got to be alive and I got to be growing in my faith. You can now share the gospel in 90 seconds. I love apologetics, but here's reality. If your apologetic isn't leading you to talk about Jesus Christ, you are wasting your time. Throw me out. Get mad at me. Beat everybody up with your IQ. What good is it? If you're not going to tell them about Jesus, because it's at the name of Jesus that every knee is going to bow and every tongue is going to confess, it's not our amazing arguments. I love apologetics. Been doing it for over 20 years. Not 30. I'm not that old, Heinz. That's Mike Riddle. Just don't let me. Mike's old. He's been doing it for 30 years. Ready? Now what I want to do, because I think I got enough to do this. They're not free, there's a charge. Bait and switch. Got you to take it first. You gonna pay the price? Can't hear you. You gonna pay the price?
Yeah.
All right, here's the price. Before you leave, I won't make you wait because we're gonna wrap up, we're gonna do a Q&A thing. Here's another batch. Here's your price. You're wearing one, you take one. And you share that message with somebody. Don't walk out of here tonight without one of these if you're going to wear one. You're up on the front here. That's the cost. You take one, you wear one, you share one. Because we need to be about sharing his name out there. All right, I'm done.
So yes, we're going to have some time for Q&A, but while we're getting ready for that, think of a question you want to ask Carl. And while you're thinking of that, we're going to take a free will offering to help cover the cost of this ministry. And so if you feel you want to share in that, please do. And meanwhile, we'll take 10, 15 minutes for some questions for Carl. And,
Heinz, would you let it be known that tomorrow night, it's not just for the youth, it's families. These folks that come, but maybe you'd like to say what we did about what he's going to share tomorrow night at First Baptist.
Yeah, we'll cover that after we do the Q&A. We're going to introduce that.
Can I, while you're taking the offering, can I show a video? I found what I wanted to show you, how the continents were actually formed. Can I show it to you? While you're taking the offering, here you go. This is how the continents really formed.
Oh.
So have you asked Bill Nye about that?
Stick with it. So, that's how the continent's really formed.
Okay, questions, anybody? Yeah. Okay, while I walk over that, I just found an interesting piece of information about Bill Nye as I was out in the foyer. Bill Nye grew up in Redmond, which is not far from here. And Ron Payne, who you met, who's leading the creation tours, he also grew up in Redmond, Kirkland. He worked with Bill Nye in a lab for, I forget how many years, but a number of years. So he knows a little bit about the wild Bill Nye, the science guy.
Yeah, so at my school, there's this kid, and keeps on asking me a question, which I totally forgot the answer. We had someone in Apologetics forums. It was the thing you brought up, but you never really explained this. It was the scientists can see like millions of light years away from Earth. How can a young universe have stars millions of light years away?
Okay.
So that's a question, yes.
It's a real common question. And the way that I answer things is that when I don't know something, I'm smart enough that I can answer every question asked in 3 languages. Because I know how to say I don't know in 3 languages. I'm actually working on my 4th language. Spanish is no, so, low, what's that?
No sé.
See, yeah, I'm working on that. I'm not fluent in it yet, so I'm still only 3 languages. But guess what? I know a PhD astrophysicist. I'll let him answer it.
One of the most common questions that I get asked when people find out that I'm a creation astronomer is, what about distant starlight? How did God get the light from those distant galaxies to Earth in thousands of years that the Bible says for the age of the universe? Well, there are actually several different ways to get light to travel those enormous regions in a relatively short amount of time. One way is what's called an anisotropic synchrony convention. That's a little bit like time zones on the Earth. You know, I can leave Kentucky at around 4 o'clock in the airplane and arrive in Colorado at 4 o'clock without going infinitely fast or anything like that. And the reason is because the way time is defined on Earth, we use a local time convention as we travel across the world. As long as I'm going west, that'll work. Well, a similar thing can be done in space. In fact, has been done since ancient times. And so perhaps God is using that anisotropic time zone model of zones out in space there. And so light can travel those enormous regions in no time at all. Light can be created with the star on day 4, and it can arrive on Earth on day 4. You see, so it's not really an issue. But there are other creationists that have proposed that God used perhaps time dilation, gravitational time dilation, for example. Einstein tells us that time can flow at different rates in different environments. That's something that we've demonstrated with atomic clocks. We know it's true. So perhaps time flows more slowly on Earth than it does in the distant region of the universe, because the Earth is in a gravitational well. That is, it's near the center of a finite amount of galaxies, and therefore time will flow more slowly on Earth than it does out in the distant regions of space. And so light can trickle in at its own slow rate, but on Earth only thousands of years elapses. That's an interesting possibility. There's also an offshoot of that called Carmelian physics that would allow basically the same thing to happen, but it adds an extra dimension to a general relativity. So these are interesting possibilities, but we should also keep in mind the possibility that God may have used a supernatural mechanism. After all, God is not bound by the laws of nature as we are, especially during the creation week, when God was doing things in a supernatural rather than naturalistic way. So that's certainly a possibility as well. It may be that we can't understand how an infinite God could do it. That doesn't mean that he can't do it. He's, after all, infinite. One answer that we would not recommend using is that God simply created the beams of light already on their way. And the reason we don't think that that's a good answer is because we see things happen in space. We see stars explode, for example. And if God just created the beam en route, then that means that the star that we saw explode never really happened. God just painted a picture of that explosion along this light beam, when in fact the star never exploded, never even existed. And so I don't think that God is going to create pictures of fictional events out in space there. And if he did out in space, why not here on Earth? We really couldn't trust our senses if God created light beams that don't really come from their source. So I don't think that's the best explanation. And another thing I want to point out, though, is that the Big Bang, the alternative to biblical creation, also has a similar type of problem, a light travel time problem of its own. It's called the horizon problem. And basically it has to do with the cosmic microwave background that we see streaming from the distant regions of the universe. We find that it's very uniform. And that shouldn't be, because in the Big Bang model, it should have different temperatures at different places. Why is it so uniform? Obviously, light energy had to travel from the hotter regions to the cooler regions to equilibrate those temperatures, but there hasn't been enough time. Even in 13.7 billion years, there's not enough time for light to travel from one side of the physical universe to the other. And so that's a light travel time problem for the Big Bang. It seems to me that if the alternative to biblical creation has the same type of problem as biblical creation, then you can't argue that distant starlight somehow disproves biblical creation in favor of the Big Bang. And after all, God is omniscient. He could have used a mechanism that we do know about, or he could have used a mechanism that we don't know about. It's not a problem for an infinite God to get light from distant galaxies to Earth in thousands of years.
What's that?
We're gonna look back at it later.
Jason Lyle is with ICR, Institute of Christian Research. There's another writer, John Hartnett, who is with CMI, Creation Ministries International. He's an Australian astronomer, physicist, and I find he is the best writing that explains the issue. And what Carl said, the Big Bang has got all sorts of problems. He mentioned a few, but there's 20 or more problems that it has. It's a complicated issue, but it has not been resolved by the secular scientists.
I want to ask my question very carefully. The slide that you showed with Bill Nye and his statement that we need scientists for voters. My first question is, what would your definition, or what is your definition of a scientist?
Someone who does science.
When I heard the statement, and the reason for my question was because the result of that statement wasn't the same as yours. When I heard the statement that we need scientists, what went through my mind was that he is telling us or suggesting that we need children to understand the scientific method of problem solving, not the results of or their perceptions of that process. If we take out the scientific method of problem solving, we are not asking any questions. And where there are no questions, there was no need or no recognition of an inconsistency. So when I heard that statement, I tended to agree and validate that we do need children to be raised knowing the scientific method of problem solving, to form a conjecture, then test it, look for what didn't work, and keep testing.
Now, when you heard his talk in its entirety, do you think that's what he's saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. Do I think that we need people that do real science? Absolutely. Absolutely. And the scientific method? Absolutely. Understanding and using it, which, by the way, the scientific method was created in the Judeo-Christian biblical mindset. So I would be in agreement with that, but that's not what he's saying. When he says we need scientists, he means people that have bought out on naturalistic processes slowly, gradually over millions of years. That's what he's talking about. Change.
And what I agree with you. I agree with you. What I separate then would be the definition of a scientist, an evolutionist, and somebody who has bought into Darwinism. Or that we have evolved from amoebas, because your reasoning was perfect. We can't, if over time we are the result of adaptations, then why does the original still exist? They should have died out. And so your reasoning was perfect with that. But I believe that when he made that statement, to whether or not you are correct, and I agree with you, I think that we took the term scientist a little bit too broad on its own, because we have scientists who fight for creation.
Okay, I don't know if you want to respond any more to that, and we'll take the next question. I mean, science is a very complicated issue, as you know. And I was at a conference last weekend where the creation scientists explained how they've twisted the meaning of science to mean just naturalistic causes. That's it.
You're right.
Right? They've excluded supernatural causes.
Go to an 1828 dictionary. I find it very useful. Type in the word science in an 1828 dictionary, compare it with a modern day definition of science in a modern day dictionary, and it's totally changed. The term is totally changed. It's interesting. And by the way, my one of the statements that I made to try to step on toes, well, it gives them the right to change the definition of the word. You know, it gives them the right. 400,000 churches filled with people sitting in pews who Monday through Saturday disappear. It happened on our dime. We got to get engaged.
Other questions people might have? You know, the definition of science is changing even today. Even at this conference, you know, we think science is normal. They're now changing it to post-normal, just like postmodern, post-normal science. And they redefine it. They know it's an error, but their error supports their agenda. That's the problem.
When you went through the bracelet, what's the yellow for? Heaven. Heaven. You can use God, but I like heaven. A lot of people use God. Gold represents God. There's great verses for that. I personally I like heaven, just because I'm weird.
Go through the whole
The whole thing. Yellow. As a matter of fact, if you shoot me an email, I'll even send you a little card. I should have brought some with me. I apologize. I got a little card that goes through each one of them. But yellow is heaven or God. Black, sin. White. Oh, I'm sorry, red. Most important one, shed blood of Christ. Then that leads to the white of washing us white like snow. And then green is just, to me, growing. Because when it comes to our faith, our tagline for our ministry is when it comes to our faith, we need to know it. So you need to have apologetic, but you need to live it. Because if your life and your lips aren't in sync, it's called hypocrisy, and it's one of the #1 attacks against Christianity, let's be honest. And then the share it part. So the green is the live it part. I call them KLS bracelets. No, I live it, share it. It has all the components in there.
Okay, if there's no other question, I'm going to wrap this up by showing a few more slides here, Rick, if we could bring that up. And Carl, maybe you could come back and explain what you're going to talk about tomorrow night, because tomorrow night is a special evening. We've called it Young Adult / Family Night. And we want to emphasize, you know, all families are welcome to come, not just the youth, but also parents and grandparents should come to this. Carl, just say a few words about each of those.
Remote Control was the first book that I wrote. It's go through television shows like Finding Nemo, Lilo and Stitch, Incredibles, Bob the Builder. There are actually messages in there that we can use to have conversations about the Bible and about God. They have negative, derogatory things in there, but I like using those things as springboards to conversations. And so tomorrow night I'll go through, I probably won't do those. Andy Griffith, I'll probably bring in some Andy Griffith, but a variety of movies and television clips. Here are the messages that are in there, because if you're going to watch these things, if you're going to allow your children, your grandchildren to watch these things, teach them to critically evaluate the messages that are coming after them. I just think that that's the way you do things. And then what about human evolution? We'll deal with probably two, maybe one, just depends on how much time we have. We'll deal with Ida, one of our supposed ancestors, using their video, break it down. Here's what they found. Here's what it actually shows. And if we have time, we'll do Lucy as well. So as a minimum, we'll do EDA, but we'll, again, just using their stuff, break it down, critically evaluate it, and give answers to it. What does the evidence actually support? So whether processes are God creating. That's a decision that we each have to make on our own.
And these are two big issues that trip up our youth, and we want to make sure that they're equipped to answer the hard questions about that. Next month, May 29th, we're having another scientist come to speak to us. This fellow is from Canada, and he's trained in chemistry and biology. And his focus is on life, what's in life, the information in life, DNA, and without information, you don't have life. And DNA is that information. So he's going to speak on that, and he's also going to take another look at the first chapter of Genesis specifically, look at some of the scientific statements made there, and talk about what that what that means.
Nice.
Yep.
That right there, that's your ancestor. That's the first worm to grow legs. If you want to see the fossil evidence to support that, I'll show it to you. I've got it on my computer.
Sorry, Carl, I don't recognize that ancestor. He's not mine. And so then the next slide, I want to just reiterate the fact, Dr. Neelan will be here for the weekend. He's going to speak at the forum on a Friday night. And so he will be available to speak, possibly a breakfast, if you have a breakfast event at your church, some other event on a Saturday, or even a Sunday school hour, evening service, morning service, what have you. And so he'll be available that weekend. If you represent a different church here and want a speaker, let me know. You can email me or call me. But all the information about that is on the website. Here are some of the talks that he's given recently. He's a professor at a University of British Columbia up in Kelowna. And but he's very much a biblical creationist. So you'll want to come and hear what he has to say as well. And so do come out tomorrow night for the event, and it's not here, it's at the First Baptist Church of Arlington. So remember that. It starts at 7 o'clock, and we'll have Carl give these two talks that we just went over. Follow our website, for updates on all these topics. It's right on the front page. All the things I talked about are right on the front page. You can get right to all the information you need on them. Okay, let's take some time then. I'm going to close in a word of prayer, but there are the book tables out there. There's the CAPS book table. He's got a whole bunch of DVDs that he's got on the table there. Apologetics Forum has some other, book table there with some other flip interested. They're great for evangelism, for reaching people. And then Carl and Juan have another table, and they have a bunch of their books and DVDs there. So take a look and see what might interest you. And then, of course, there's coffee and some dessert there as well.
Don't forget the share bracelets too.
Yes, and there's some more up here that you can share. Like Carl says, it's okay to know what you believe, but you also have to live it, because if you don't live it, it's useless, and you have to share it. And this is another way of sharing. So let me close in a word of prayer. Lord, we just come to you to thank you for this evening. Thank you for the message that Carl had for us. We just thank you for their ministry, for Carl and Juan. And we just pray that you would just continue to bless them in that. And as he ministers further at the homeschool convention in Redmond and comes back here tomorrow evening to minister to us, we just thank you for that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
This thing could be tomorrow night. First Baptist.
Tomorrow night's First Baptist.
Yeah.
Yeah, let everybody grab some of the